Hello and welcome to the Unofficial ALI Protocol Podcast. I know so many of you have been begging me to start a podcast for so long, so this is your gift. Before we dive into it, I think we need to talk about why it's called the ALI Protocol. It's not the ALI Protocol, it's not the ALI Protocol, it's the ALI Protocol, and it stands for Alekha's Light Integration. And where did I get this from? So back when I was trying to name this, there were so many different names. It started off with Let the Light Leak In and a whole other bunch of things. But I really thought about it. What is this protocol? It's a protocol for you to come back to your own inner light within and really integrate that, right? Because I think a lot of us do these practices and we know that there's light all around us, but how do we integrate it into these tangible steps day to day where we can actually be in flow with our true light, our true essence? And I know that might sound woo-woo, and I disguise it with all these scientific terms, but that's really what this protocol is. So let's backtrack to when this all started in 2018. I was like any other college student. I was doing all the college things, and I went to Greece because I was working abroad there, and I came back and I developed a mysterious infection. And I lost about 50 pounds in the span of a month, which, okay, skinny, but it wreaked havoc on my body. And I developed all of these really gnarly symptoms where I couldn't leave bed. My blood pressure was dropping. My heart rate was racing. And I was just really, really sick. And I went to the doctor and they said, your electrolytes are just super low. You're very malnourished and we don't know where this is coming from. And so I lived like that for probably 6 or 7 years, going through ping pong diagnosis, a bunch of different doctors, specialists, Mayo Clinic, you name it. And the best they could give me were diagnosis of POTS, mast cell activation, mixed connective tissue disease, interstitial cystitis, whole laundry list of diagnoses. And honestly, that didn't feel complete to me. I knew that there was more to the story. I was someone who was healthy my whole life. So I didn't understand how someone could just get these disorders out of nowhere. And again, they didn't really have medication for me back then. They gave me some, but none of it actually did anything. In fact, it made me worse. And at this point, I still really wasn't eating. So I was just so ill with the meds they were giving me. And I had a functional medicine family friend tell me there's this very ancient Vedic practice that you can do. And I wouldn't recommend anyone does this without the guidance of a teacher. But at this time, I didn't know any better and I was willing to try whatever. And she told me to do this practice. I did the practice pretty religiously for hours a day for 6 months and things got better. I didn't know how they were getting better. I mean, a lot of different things were going on and I just was like, what the heck is this practice? What is this unlocking in me? And the truth is, it didn't just make my physical symptoms better. It unlocked my consciousness. And I was able to see for the first time that my physical symptoms were being caused by something more. Fast forward, I was pre-med. I was those annoying pre-med people that made medical school their whole personality. And I had to take a year off because I was so sick, but I wanted to go back and apply for medical school, still do a master's program to increase my chances of getting into medical school. And I remember writing an essay for my master's program at Columbia in human nutrition and metabolic biology. And I wrote about how gluten and dairy, cutting it out, was helping me. And the director, she called me and she was like, I don't know that you can say that. There's no data to back it up. The wheels were turning. Okay, there's not just physical symptoms and also all of the stuff that Western medicine told us to be true. There might be more to the story. And so I kept that in the back of my mind as I went on. So I did this program. It was a great time. I learned so much. I did my my thesis in circadian biology. I still wanted to go to medical school. So I came and I moved to San Diego and I worked at an intermittent fasting lab and really there I saw like the gut microbiome, what the impact was there. And then the wheels, they kept turning. I was like, okay, all of this is linked, but I don't know how. And at this time with my POTS and my MCAS, I still was getting better, but I wasn't in full remission because there was still a few components that I wasn't addressing, which we'll talk about later of how this led me to develop the protocol. 2020 hit, it was COVID, and I saw what the medical system was doing. And I did not think this is what health was. I knew from my own personal experience, I knew from what I was seeing in others that there is so much more to health. And I sound like a broken record, but there's so much more to health than just the physical. I stepped away from wanting to go to medical school. I had my application in, I had my acceptance, I took my MCAT, and I said to myself, I saw that acceptance and I said, this is not what I want to do with my future. But as an Indian person, that's not really an option. I was like, what the hell am I going to do with my life? And so I saw that the research I was doing, like no shade to any of the people that were there, they were doing incredible research, but I knew that I wanted to study what was going on in my body when I was doing this practice. And I was figuring it out for 2 or 3 years. I was doing consulting. I was doing scientific writing. I still knew that there was science to this, but I didn't know where it was. And that was something that really was my purpose. And it's still my purpose of this stuff. Yes, it is so ancient and so energetic and it's esoteric, but there is real science to back this up. And alas, the ALI protocol was born. So now I'm going to talk about the ALI protocol and each different tenet that is in the ALI protocol and where I really got this from, because I think when some people see it, they might think, okay, this is all of these different tools and some are science-backed, some aren't. Where exactly did they come from? So the ALI protocol is split up into 3 different components. There's the physical component, the mental and cognitive component, and the emotional and spiritual component. And I talked briefly about my scientific background and my own spiritual practice, but I really want to deep dive into where I got each one and how they've helped me in my own healing journey. So the ALI protocol starts off with circadian rhythms and just really the light environment aspect. And that to me is the most important physical tool that you will use for your healing. I have never seen someone heal a chronic illness without addressing this. And I wrote my thesis in circadian misalignment and shift work. And that's really the first time I heard of circadian rhythms and circadian biology as a whole. But I knew from my own personal experience that when I had POTS, like when I was in the thicket of it and I went to Europe on a trip, yes, I went to Europe after I got sick, I completely spiraled in my symptoms when I didn't sleep. And especially those nights from college that I remember of, okay, stayed up super late to like pull an all-nighter to study or whatever. And then the next day I would try to catch up on sleep. I was messed up for 3 or 4 days after that. And I really believed that circadian health was so important to the puzzle. And so I really emphasized that circadian health and being in the right environment, the right light environment, I mean, that sets the tone for the entire cellular biology. So that was pretty self-explanatory. Hydration. This was a cool one because I only found out about this probably 3 years ago. I had a friend really introduce me to the living power of water. And I just thought water was water. Like, okay, like you drink water, that's it. But there's so much more that goes into hydration. And I want to briefly talk about Veda Austin's work and the experiments of Masaru Emoto, where they essentially would put an intention into water and freeze it, and the water would show them that spitting image. And I was like, what the hell is this? But it happened so much. There were so many replicatable instances of this that I was like, okay, there's something to this. And If any of you, tying it back to POTS and MCAS, if any of you have a chronic illness, you know that dehydration is one of the biggest ways that chronic illness gets worse. And I truly believe that. And there's so much more that goes into hydration than just water. And I actually found out that water can go into this fourth phase called EZ water, which is not a liquid, it's not a solid, it's that intermediate phase. And this is really where the magic happens. And I'm not going to go too much into water, just knowing that it really is this living medium. Hydration is so determined by minerals and just all these other things. And I do want to note too that this whole myth of drinking 8 glasses of water a day is not necessarily the case for every single person. In fact, I just learned that in our evolution, we actually didn't drink a ton of water as hunter-gatherers, and we got a lot of our water from food. So there's so much that goes into hydration. And then the next part of it was diet. And diet to me has been a very interesting topic. I have seen and experimented with so many diets over the years. And truthfully, there really is no one size fits all when it comes to diet. There are so many different diets that are really beneficial for just depending on what type of person you are and your needs. The one diet, though, that I don't recommend is keto, admittedly. But in general, staying away from processed foods, keeping high in protein and fiber, limiting alcohol and caffeine and all the things that are inflammatory, for the most part, that is really what I abide by. But there really is no one size fits all with diet. And that one, I think, too, the point of including diet in there is to seeing what intuitively does your body feel like is like going to make it feel its best. The last part of the physical stuff is opening drainage pathways. And again, that was something that was pretty new to me over the last 5 years or so. When did I first get into this? I would say I first got into this when I found out about lymphatic drainage and fascia work and just like castor oil packs and just the power of opening up your drainage pathways and really being able to not heal until you do that. So I don't know, again, there is something so, even though it might not be science backed, there's something so potent in doing all of that and following this particular sequence. So then we get into the mental and cognitive part of the protocol that, again, that was a pretty new thing for me. I had not learned about it. I had not even known about it until I had a trainer introduce me to these like brain retraining exercises. And once I did more research on it, I saw that brain retraining and really synchronizing the eye movements to the different parts of the brain are a game changer. Not just in POTS, but I mean, in just everything. It's so important for overall health. I mean, he uses it for athletic performance and for longevity. So I think there is going to be something so big that comes from that. And again, you could do all the meditating in the world, but if you're not able to integrate that, right, the light integration, if you're not able to integrate that into your day-to-day, then all your efforts are futile. I'm sorry. So yeah, I feel like that is really the bridge between the physical and the more emotional and subconscious stuff to really make sure the nervous system and the brain feels safe enough to receive these higher level awareness, which in my opinion is the thing that actually heals. So then we get into the subconscious, energetic, emotional, however you want to categorize it. And I say this, but it really feels like that's what a diluted definition of it is. Because again, coming back to the name of this protocol, Alekha's light integration, it's really coming back to wholeness within yourself, because that is what heals you, right? You can do all of the other tools and they will help you and they probably will get you out of chronic illness, but they're not going to be the thing that brings you to wholeness, because that's a whole other set of tools. And it really comes from something that you can't categorize and something that you can't explain. And there's something so beautiful too when people start to dive into this work, that their physical symptoms don't just get better. There's a magical unfolding that happens of their consciousness, of their psyche, whatever you want to call it. And their life seems to change in ways that they never thought were possible. So that's really where this subconscious, emotional, energetic work comes in. And I will tell you something that, and this is not to be taken the wrong way, but everything in this reality is what you create of it, and it's what you create for yourself. There is nothing in this reality that happens on accident or that exists outside of you. And every moment, every thought, every awareness that you have is creating your reality, whether you like it or not. And that's just the truth. I say that not to dismiss anyone or put blame of, oh, you caused your illness. No, it's nothing like that. It's more to give the awareness of, if you can create this amazing reality of hope and healing and joy, then the world is your limit, and your illness is really just a mere droplet in that. And so that's why I always say illness is the path to awakening, because to tie it all back, so much of my illness, when I think of when I first got diagnosed, it was shitty and it was horrible. But would I go and trade it for the world? Absolutely not. Because every single thing that has happened to me in my life has brought me here to this very day. And that might be a painful truth for some people to swallow. And it was a painful truth for me to swallow. The more that I see with this work, I do think too that a lot of the subconscious, a lot of these emotional states are not necessarily things that we have control over. And it's stuff that, I mean, we come into this world, at least in my belief system, and we are these perfect beings, these perfect, magical, unlimited beings. And slowly over time, that gets chipped away from us, right? It's the conditioning of our parents or our teachers or society or, I don't know, God knows what else, that form us into who we are. And the way that we operate on a daily basis, we likely don't have the awareness of. I mean, sure, people around us could probably see that, okay, you're acting like that, but we don't want to believe that. We're like, oh, I'm acting just, I'm just being me. But the you, quote unquote, is actually just a conditioned being. And so once people start to do this work and tap into that just knowledge, that's really when the journey starts, especially with chronic illness. And I'll just talk about my own journey and some reflections that I've heard. A lot of my chronic illness, yes, it on paper was caused by X, Y, and Z, whatever you want to call it. But in the energetic space, in the emotional space, a lot of it was caused by just deep feelings of unsafety that spanned my whole life, maybe lifetimes, maybe picked up from ancestors, who knows. But it's what I've been carrying my whole day-to-day function, is just this feeling of unsafety and not feeling safe in this world, not feeling safe to express in this world, not feeling safe to receive. And it's, again, not something that is very conscious. It's just like the way in every single action, every single decision that I make, every single interaction, it stems from this really core program. And that doesn't just go away overnight, right? You have to, in every moment, be aware and surrender to just knowing that this is what the truth is. And from that space, that's when the illness starts to heal. To bring it back, everything that has happened in my life, nothing has ever been a mistake. And I have had some pretty shitty things happen to me that I could think, oh, this was a mistake, but nothing is ever a mistake. In fact, the higher order that's orchestrating all of this, everything is happening for us to purify us, to move us forward to that wholeness, to that light integration. I mean, I truly believe that, and I see that over and over again. So when you connect to this higher power, again, this is really where the illness goes away. And again, the illness going away shouldn't even really be the goal, because that's what we're conditioned to feel or conditioned to believe, but it's what is under the illness that needs to be woken up within you. And so that's really where I found quantum biology. And quantum biology is essentially trying to put this in a scientific level. And it's a very new and emerging field. So there's not a ton of data about it yet, but essentially the three main tenets are light, hydration, and magnetism. And I thought, wow, this is exactly what this protocol, the science behind it is: light, hydration, and magnetism. But going a layer deeper, when we talk about consciousness-based medicine, every cell in our body is conscious, right? And whether we have scientific proof to quantify that or not, it's irrelevant, because this is what keeps us alive. And it's not like I just made this up. The ancients have been talking about this for thousands of years. And only now maybe is modern science starting to catch up to it. But there's something really real to this. And there's something very, almost the more that you go into this work of quantum, anything, quantum physics, quantum biology, you realize the more you think you might know, the more you actually don't know anything about how any of this works. And so really, the message of consciousness-based medicine too, at least in my view, is there really is so much unfolding that's going on and so much magic. If we can tune into the fact that every single part of our body is conscious and, you know, a living entity, if you will, I think we can really begin to view ourselves as much more than our physical body, which is really, I feel, also what the goal of consciousness-based medicine is that we can see that every cell in us, I mean, I saw this thing that was like, if you, like, we have God, whatever, God lives in the sky, whatever, but to our gut microbiome, we might be God. That was trippy to me. Because there's something so much bigger than us, but there's also something so much smaller than us. And so it's really about bridging together the as above, so below, as above, so within, this whatever is going on. And I think also with consciousness-based medicine too, we are able to connect back to the wholeness of existence and the wholeness of the life around us. And in my opinion, that's really how we heal and come back into wholeness. And with quantum biology too, it's super fascinating because when they do these experiments with sound, they can see that the cells actually restructure themselves and there's no outside intervention. I mean, how the hell does that happen? Like, just playing sounds and vibrations is enough to move the needle with certain things. And there was also this one study about how playing vibrations for the gut microbiome actually changes their composition and their richness. And that is nuts to me. So this is really where I feel like this field is so beneficial and really the future of medicine. And I touched on something briefly: sound. This is how this all ties together, at least in my own healing journey. Sound has been the biggest tool, if not the tool, that has led me to have miracles in my life. When we think of sounds are all around us at any given moment, but really what I'm referring to is vibration, because sound is very intricately tied with vibration. And so when the wheels get turning a little bit and we think, okay, we are, these light beings, we are these vibrations, how do we come back to the big V vibration? And this is really where I feel like sound is the biggest tool. I'll talk briefly about mantras and how they are so potent. Really, these ancient sound technologies, not just mantras, but ragas as well, they can really connect us to the one unifying vibration, and they have. So having that just also be on the forefront of maybe there's something to how vibration and sound and all of this stuff intertwines. And I don't know the answer to that right off the bat, but I am curious in my work to see Okay, it really feels like sound and vibration, however you want to quantify vibration, that is really what brings us back into this wholeness. So, all's to say that the ALI protocol didn't happen overnight. It was years of research, both scientific and non scientific, to really see what is the way back home. What are the signals to our consciousness that really bring it back into wholeness. And as you can see from what I've talked about, it's not just physical, it's not just emotional, it's not just mental. There's a combination in all of these to work on these subtle different aspects of ourselves to really come into oneness and fullness with ourselves. So I do feel like this field of quantum biology and consciousness-based medicine, this is really going to be the thing that we're going to look back on when people started talking about nutrition in, like, I don't know, the 1990s. And we're like, oh, that person's crazy for talking about nutrition and giving up cigarettes. Like, we're going to look at quantum biology and consciousness-based medicine in 10, 20 years. And so much is going to come out. There's probably going to be some stuff with like AI. And we're really going to see like, oh, wow, there's something so potent and so powerful in this. So thank you guys. And I'll be back soon.